You are listening to the Mark Guzman Podcast Experience. In November of 2016, California voters decided it was time to legalize marijuana for recreational use. On January 1st of 2018, marijuana officially became available for retail purchase for anyone over the age of 21. Now legalization has opened up a whole new world to an industry getting ready to explode. Today, my guest is Lauren Watson, Marketing Communications Manager for Berkeley Patients Group, which is the nation's longest-running dispensary, to get some insight on what legal pot means for California. Well, Lauren, thank you for being on the podcast and welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Long drive from Berkeley to Pinole, right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Friday traffic wasn't too bad?
No, I actually commuted from Sausalito today, which is where I live. Yeah. Got a little work from home action in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So probably easy jump over the Richmond Bridge and Richmond Parkway. So this is going to be a very special episode because there's a lot of buzz and talk around marijuana now being legalized in California as of the 1st. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it was legal to have it on you as of January 1st, 2017, but legal for resale in 2018, correct?
This is correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you're with Berkeley Patients Group, and you're their director of marketing. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what year did Berkeley Patient Group start?
Right, so we were founded on October 31st in 1999, so that makes us 18 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 99, in a marijuana dispensary, so obviously it was medicinal at the time, but was there a lot of controversy at the time when you opened up?
Yeah, well, so, we are really fortunate to be in the Berkeley community, which has historically been very progressive and forward-thinking. So in 1996, when the Compassionate Use Act was put on the ballot, which is Prop 215, legalizing medical cannabis, it was, supported by 80% of Berkeley voters. So when that passed, shortly thereafter, almost a year later, the city allowed for the medical cannabis dispensaries to form. Now, our founder, Jim McKlellen, himself was an advocate, and he suffered from AIDS. And so he was, part of the gay community in San Francisco, which was reeling from the AIDS crisis at that time. So he had, firsthand experience and insight into cannabis as a healing tool. So I think that, combination of just, our community being in the right place, Jim's foresight and activism and belief in mission in the company kind of, allowed us to flourish in a time when it was, again, highly stigmatized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sounds like it was fairly easy. Now, were you with Berkeley Patients Group at the time when it first opened?
No. 99 was way before my time. I just came in the last 2 years. So, but it's not without trials and tribulations, but I would say that just, the foundation of it, we were lucky to be in the Berkeley area and in California in general at the time. Yeah.
Now, what were some of the challenges it faced in trying to get that place opened?
Well, I can't speak too much to that because, again, I wasn't there. But, a lot of the challenges happened, actually. There was a lot of federal crackdowns more recently when Melinda Haig and under the Obama administration, they actually tried to shut down Berkeley Patients Group, the federal government.
Oh, I remember that. It made the news, right?
Yeah, it did. And it was, based on a reading of the laws saying that you had to be, I believe, within 1,000 feet of a school. You had to be further than that. We were just a couple feet under that actual limit.
Like
and
997.
It was so silly, yeah, like really, really, really close. Which That was rough. So, but we ended up suing the federal government and winning that case.
Wow.
We are one of, Harborside also beat them. So we are one of two that successfully did beat the federal government in court. And the awesome thing was that, the school that they attempted to use as a tool to shut us down actually came to our defense in court, as did our mayor, as did a lot of city officials and state officials, because, again, Jim founded this organization with the sight of trying to be a responsible, compliant, and compassionate business. So we've spent lots of time, and our success really has been because of the relationships we've fostered within our community, not only with the citizens there, but with our city officials, with other local businesses, and being able to support. We were actually a donor to that school. So, it's really been our community that's allowed us to flourish and be where we are today.
That's incredible. And I believe the federal government has to let you operate as long as you operate within the guidelines of the state, correct?
Has to. So they can enforce whatever laws they want. But again, we're lucky to be in California that is, very strong in its, government engagement, and they are very protective of the laws that they've passed, which one of them being medical cannabis and now legal cannabis.
Now, what do you think marijuana for so long has had a bad stigma behind it?
So actually, the use of cannabis as medicine and also as a spiritual agent is long documented in many ancient texts. You can read it back in ancient Chinese texts. And it was actually sold in U.S. pharmacies for a while in all 50 states. Now, the 60s happened, and that was when, lots of drugs were being consumed, including cannabis. There was the hippie counterculture. It was very anti-war. And so in the 70s, Nixon declared the war on drugs. Now, he did this to demonize and to incarcerate the hippie culture and also people of color. And this isn't just hearsay. An actual Nixon official came out and said that this was our goal in starting the war on drugs. Now, when he did that, he made the different schedules for drugs, different classifications. Schedule 1 being, these are the worst drugs. They have no medical benefit, and they're priority 1, get them off the streets. He put cannabis in there with heroin. And he did that based on no scientific evidence or any kind of research. And then fast forward to Reagan. Nancy Reagan gave that famous speech, "Just say no." And so that's when the reefer madness started. They were releasing propaganda about how it killed brain cells and how it was this dangerous drug that your children
and
are going
I
to
believe
become
at the
addicted
time
to.
they paid scientists to come up with these falsified reports.
Exactly. So the stigma surrounding cannabis wasn't just a natural progression. It was a highly, calculated and targeted message to the American people to stigmatize this plant and the people that used it, and to use that as a way to mass incarcerate this many kinds of people and, fuel the prison industrial complex. So it's a really sad story.
It is.
Yeah. But people, obviously, with all the legalization movements, people are waking up to that, and they're asking, to prove these things with science,
Well, and not just more advanced science, but we also now have the internet that connects everyone. It's much easier to communicate and get your message across. And when you start putting stuff out there with absolutely zero evidence behind it, obviously we all know some people will believe whatever they listen to and see, but a big chunk of people will look at it and fact check it. Yeah. And they want to see the document, the proof. They want to see the science behind it.
Well, and even past, the evidence and documentation, like most people, especially people that are really hesitant to cannabis, if you see somebody you know or love that has some kind of ailment or disease and they're using cannabis beneficially, and you see the impact it has, like, that is going to change your mind. And that's really a lot of it that's how the culture and the mindset of this plant is changing, is because people know somebody who has cancer, who has AIDS, and who's using cannabis as a better alternative to some of these prescription drugs.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that the alternative to the prescription drugs, because that in itself is a giant epidemic right now. And in fact, there's documentary after documentary now coming out just covering the whole opioid crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And marijuana is, you can't really get addicted to that. And it's natural, and it's a great alternative for those that don't want to be consuming chemicals that are going to damage your liver or come with like 30 or 40 side effects.
Absolutely. It's like sometimes, these prescription pills, it's like the side effects are even worse than what you're using the pill to treat with, Cannabis, very small side effects. Get the munchies.
Yeah. So what's your background that one day you decided, let me work with the Berkeley Patients Group?
Yeah. So, I, like probably many other people, fell in love with cannabis in high school. After I first used it, I was on a friend's boat. We were on a lake. There was stars. It was nighttime. We had lots of friends and good music, and it was just a really magical experience, right? And so, fast forward to my career. I'm from the East Coast, so when I moved out to California for a software job, like many other people do, to the Bay Area, I was just incredibly amazed the first time I walked into one of these dispensaries in the city, right? Like, it was beautifully decorated. It was like being in a department store. The people were nice. It was just, and it was so normalized. Like, I had never seen anything like that, and I couldn't believe that such a place existed.
I bet it was a culture shock.
Oh,
to see that,
goodness.
right?
From just my experiences on the East Coast and then coming in and being able to walk into a store and, have somebody, knowledgeably explain to me these different products and how I can use them, and how it wasn't just like whatever was in a bag that was available from my friend,
Yeah.
So once I saw that, I kind of just on a whim submitted my resume to some industry-specific staffing agencies, and I ended up getting a call from 2 weeks later, a call from Danielle Schumacher at THC Staffing. She's still one of my good friends today, and she told me about this opening at Berkeley Patients Group, the nation's oldest, longest-running medical cannabis dispensary, and they needed somebody with my same marketing skill set. And so I took a leap of faith. It seemed like a good idea, and I've, been on this roller coaster ever since.
It's a good decision because you entered what's about to be an extremely booming business.
Yeah.
I mean, across the nation, especially here in California, I attended a financial conference, and one of the big topics was, of course, marijuana, and this was in Colorado. And their entire industry over there is booming. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see how California's industry really builds.
The difference is, it's interesting to see. We're trying to predict it based off of Colorado, but, California's had medical cannabis since 1996. So, there's questions about what this new legal market will look like. Is it really going to be just as big of a boom as Colorado, or have people been using it for a long time, and this is kind of not new for them,
Yeah. And it would be safer too. So instead of for those that don't have a medicinal card, instead of buying it from their neighbor, 2 doors down, who knows what they're selling or what it's laced with, now you're buying medicinal grade.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about Berkeley Patients Group.
Yeah.
What's the average customer experience when they walk in? What's it like?
Yeah. So, it's not anything scary or out of the normal, right? So if you're coming to BPG, you'll park in our parking lot. You'll come up to the door. Our friendly greeter will ask you to show your identification, valid government-issued ID. That can be a passport or your driver's license. We'll scan it to verify it. We don't store that information or do anything with it. And then you'll walk inside and you'll get in line. You'll see that we have, our products displayed nicely in these beautiful cases. We have a wall of clones and plants that you can buy, and we also have a vending machine, which is actually really cool. So that's also something that you can take part in. But you'll come in, and when you get to the counter, you'll have just an opportunity to talk to a knowledgeable consultant about the different products we offer. You can ask about things that you'd like to treat or maybe some effects you'd like to see. I would say, one of the interesting things is that a lot of these recreational patients, and I say that in quotes, they come in, but they're actually really medical patients because they're asking for things that, help with their sleep or will help with their muscle tension, or they're really actively trying to treat things. It's just that, maybe before this legalization era, they felt unsafe, they didn't want to be on a list or for whatever reason, and now they're coming in and they're getting to use the plant medicinally. So you'll have that wonderful conversation. You'll pay with a debit card or cash. We don't take credit. Banking is a huge issue. And then we'll send you home with a child-proof bag for you to store your products in. And you're on your way to enjoy your day and your cannabis products you just got.
So for those that are quick on the run and just want to swing by Berkeley Patients Group, the vending machine. What's in the vending machine?
Yeah, the vending machine is super cool. We're like one of the first people to have it. What a time to be alive, right? Cannabis vending machine. So it's just, a combination of some of our favorite products. And, we have the mindset of if you're really quick and on the go, like you probably need a product that's the same. So we have lots of pre-rolled joints and vape cartridges, low-dose edibles, some of our best-selling flowers, just really... We've tried to include a array of products that are really popular at good price points.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the actual marijuana itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where do you get it from? Because I think that's one of the biggest concerns that people, once they start researching this a bit more, and for some of the ones that get really diehard into it, they want to know where it's coming from. So where does Berkeley Patients Group get the marijuana from?
Oh, certainly. Those are connoisseurs, we call them. We source a lot of our what we call sun-grown flower, which is really just organically grown outdoors. We source a lot of that from the Emerald Triangle. The Emerald Triangle is a convergence of Mendocino, Trinity, and Humboldt counties. The Emerald Triangle is to cannabis what Napa Valley is to wine. It's the perfect climate, the perfect conditions. It really produces the world's best cannabis. So we get a lot of our outdoor from there. Now we also source indoor grown flowers from everywhere up and down the state. And, some consumers are hardcore indoor users, and then some are hardcore sun-grown users. So we try to keep a variety of options.
Is there a reason why one would prefer one over the other?
Well, you think of it like sun-grown is organic, so there's somebody who wants theirs grown out in the sun with the wind and the rain and all of that. And then there's...
Is the indoor one already getting marked and branded as GMO already?
No, not necessarily. It's more... So indoor, you have a lot more control, obviously, of the conditions. So you're going to see higher THC percentages, maybe like brighter colors, and it's more about kind of the look and the potency of the indoor product. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that whole industry, the growers, it's affecting the Napa Valley and even the Central Valley. Like the workers that were out picking grapes,
Mm-hmm.
they're leaving those grape growers and they're going up to Mendocino County to basically pick buds there because they
Yeah.
get paid twice as much in cash.
Yep, that is true. It's a lot of cash industry.
So how does Berkeley Patient Group, how do you put these contracts together with growers, and then how do you test the quality and even the THC percentage?
Well, so there's two parts to that. The contracts with the growers, one of the big differences pre-legalization and post-legalization is there's this now added step in the supply chain as the distributor. So the vendor or the cultivator will, give their products to the distributor. The distributor is responsible for making sure that these products are compliant before they move to the retailer. So part of compliance is packaging and labeling and testing. But BPG actually was one of the industry leaders in setting standards for cannabis testing. We saw this as an issue. Again, Jim McKlellen, being an AIDS patient himself, he knew the importance of having clean medicine getting to people who really need it and who are especially suffering from autoimmune deficiencies. Because if someone who has that condition consumes something dirty, it can make things way worse. So BPG and Berkeley specifically, we work with the city, and the city has actually the strictest testing standards in the entire state, in the entire country. And in fact, our standards are more strict than what the state released as part of their regulations. So that quality control is really important to us, and now, thankfully, it's a critical piece and a necessary piece for every legal business out there. So, I'm not super scientifically inclined. There are very strategic, methods that are involved, but essentially we test for any kind of contaminants, so pesticides, mold, bacteria, and then we also test for potency. We test for, THC, CBD, CBN, some of the other compounds in the product.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, CBD. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, when they hear marijuana, they automatically know THC, right? What is CBD? Because I think that is not really talked about much. In fact, CBD you can find in many products already.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, poor THC has kind of gotten demonized as like the bad guy. But so CBD is actually legal in 50 states. So, and that means that all that means is that there's, I think, less than 0.06 or 0.08% THC in the actual product. So, like, pretty much no THC. And that happened because, there was a huge push around the country to address there's how effective CBD can be for things like seizures. And then there was some really publicized cases with children who really needed these CBD products but were being forced to move to places like Colorado just to, be able to stay alive. So CBD is a really, really awesome thing. And, the two of them, THC and CBD, are actually complementary, but they do have different effects. So CBD, again, does not have the normal psychoactive effects that are associated with the high. It's more calming, and it still has really great healing properties. It's a great introductory for if you're, worried about starting or you're just new. CBD is fantastic. Now, the two complement each other. So, for instance, THC also has some really great effects and some really good health benefits, but, if you consume too much THC and you get a lot of anxiety, you can take CBD and that will mitigate the effects, so it'll bring the anxiety down and balance you out. So they're really complementary to each other.
What's the scientific name for CBD?
Cannabidiol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then THC is tetrahydrocannabidiol.
Way easier to just refer to as THC and CBD.
And the other thing too is THC and CBD are the most talked about because they've been the most researched. But there's actually hundreds of these other different compounds within the plant. There's CBN, there's THCA, CBDA.
I've heard of CBN, but I haven't looked into it that much.
CBN is probably as far as psychoactivity, is probably in the middle of CBD and THC. So CBN happens as your cannabis gets older and oxygen hits it, and the THC, CBN forms within that. So it's, if you have old cannabis and it's been stored properly, isn't wet, isn't, moldy, you can consume it still, and it'll have a more sedative, calming effect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would imagine that with it being legal in California, you're going to have some groups that start really experimenting a lot more with these different types of components. Eventually, hopefully, the federal government's going to be just forced to the point where they have to take it off at least Schedule 1.
Yeah.
And then a lot more testing can be done by big, giant groups and really take these extracts and see what the benefits are.
I know, places like Israel are light years ahead of us in this research. They're
really?
Yeah, huge in the the marijuana research segment, and we get a lot of our inspiration, I think, from them. It's pretty sad because they've been able to prove all of these amazing things about the plant, but
what are they doing out there? Just a ton of research?
Tons of research, yeah. They have lots of funding. I mean, they were the first to discover some of the benefits about THC and CBD. They've kind of led the world on it, and U.S. could have been us, but wow. We are at Schedule 1, and so the government forbids it.
Yeah. So what other products does the Berkeley Patient Groups have? Because it's not just flowers, correct?
Yeah, we have a wide array. Flowers are still our most popular. I think just because so many people have that experience with it. But we're seeing a lot of our flower consumers dive into other products. So vape pens are actually really, really popular. And that's just, a condensed form of the flower and put into a portable vaporizing device. People like those because, it's less on the lung strain or on the throat strain. They're discreet, convenient. There's not a lot of smell. So we have the vape pens. We have a wide array of edibles. We have, like the gluten-free, the vegan, the no sugar, all that stuff to keep our Berkeley people happy. And, we even have low-dose edibles. So not the crazy, I'm going to eat a brownie and lose my mind, but just like, couple milligram mints and stuff like that. We have a wide variety of those. We also have more traditional medical products, so like tinctures and capsules and strips that you can dissolve in your mouth. And then we have topicals, which I love. Really great introductory product for somebody. Obviously no psychoactivity when it's put on the skin, but great for muscle relief and tension. And then we also carry plants. So if you want to try to grow your own cannabis, you totally can. It's really cool. So you can buy up to 6 plants as an adult and try to grow your own.
Yeah, that's interesting. I attended a property management class where they were updating property managers on cannabis, right? That's always a big talk, and a lot of landlords still don't want smoking inside of their units, right? But the question came up about plants. Well, if you're allowed to have 6 plants, but let's say there's 4 individuals, 4 adults that live in a rental, is it 6 plants or is it really oh my God,
like
I can't
24?
do 24 plants. Yeah. Can't do math today.
Yeah.
24 plants.
Yeah.
And they said legally 24 plants because it's 6 per adult.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, and then, it also just comes down to your local municipality. Like some places have completely banned growing and cultivation, which we're actually trying to get that taken away because you should have the full rights that everyone else in your state has. And especially if you want to save money and not pay these exorbitant taxes and grow your own medicine, you should be able to do that. Just like you can grow your own tomatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about THC and CBD, but there's a whole nother sublayer to that. Mm-hmm. There's indica, sativa, and hybrids. Mm-hmm. Let's briefly, if you can, explain what those 3 are.
Certainly. So scientifically speaking, there's no difference or actual like a piece of a plant that's called that. However, it's a marketing term that was built, to help consumers understand what type of effect a product might have on them. So sativas are generally considered uplifting and energizing. Indicas are more sedative and relaxing, and then hybrids are somewhere in the middle. So you could have, an uplifting mental experience accompanied with, a relaxing bodily experience. So, but those, we choose those names based on what most people's experience is, but everyone is different. And so sometimes somebody can consume, an indica thinking it's going to be really relaxing, but it can have the opposite effect. We just don't know for sure. But generally speaking, those are the way that they're classified.
So now that it's legal and anyone over the age of 21 can go in and purchase, is there a reason why they should still have a medicinal card, or what's the difference between the two?
You don't have to, but taxes are really the main difference. And there are some protections provided as a medical patient, like you can have higher possession limits or you can purchase more plants for medical use. But it's those taxes. So the new regulations gave us 2 new taxes. So there's now a 15% excise tax, and this is for all medical and recreational. And this happens at the retail level and at the cultivation level. So then there's, the sales tax, 9.25 standard percent. And then, based on your local, ordinance, there's a varying degree of local taxes that are added to that. So if you're an adult consumer in Berkeley, you could have been paying up to 34.5% in taxes.
Wow.
Now, We in Berkeley cover, at BPG, we cover the medical tax of 2.5%. So our medical patients are only paying the 15% excise tax and then the 9.25% sales tax.
Oh, so you guys cover the other portion.
We do, yes. We've done that, and that 2.5% has existed always in Berkeley, and we've always covered that for our patients.
Okay. Okay. Now, with the additional taxes, I mean, I'm sure you saw a jump in people coming in to purchase, right? With it now being legalized. Do you expect maybe sales to dwindle down at some point when people will start getting used to, okay, well, there's another dispensary around the corner?
Yeah, so we saw what Colorado saw and what most of the industry saw, which was huge jump the first 2 weeks of January. Everyone was just really excited to like be a part of it and go in, and it's dwindled down significantly since then. We're hoping it'll pick up a little bit more in the summer months. Just, winter isn't really great for retail in general, but yeah, that sticker shock of those taxes was really, really, really high.
And hopefully now the money that California is going to make on these taxes, where's this money going to go?
Yeah, great question. So it's really complicated. They spend a lot of time, just like with all their other regulations, figuring out where all this money goes. But a majority of it goes to enforcement of the laws, which is interesting. So, the regulatory bodies and the jobs that are being created to oversee this new industry, a lot of it goes to that. Some of it will go to, research into cannabis as medicine, but also into the implications it's had on the state. So, like the economy, the jobs, the teen use, all of that stuff. And some of it does go to law enforcement. And then, there's just a long list of people who are waiting to get their pay cut from the green rush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when it was going up on the ballot and many people were campaigning for pro-legalization. One of the very interesting anti-legalization arguments that I heard, and I forgot the name of the organization, but they were saying, hey, we should not legalize it now. We're for legalization, but where this money is going to be sent to and how it's going to be used, we should deny this and vote it down because of that. Whereas in Colorado, and they were really trying to propose something similar to what Colorado does, where a lot of that money goes to rebuild schools and buy books and many different things to help out the communities and education. And so that was a very interesting anti-legalization campaign.
Yeah, that was a big focus of the people who did not like Prop 64, and some of the money does go to that. But again, there's a lot of different places where the money is being allocated to. The cool thing about Colorado is that they made so much tax revenue that they ended up giving it back to the people. So we can only hope for that in California. But I will say that, despite where the tax revenue goes, the reason that Berkeley Patients Group supported Proposition 64 was largely to release the people who were incarcerated for nonviolent cannabis crimes. We talked about the drug war already and how, people of color have been overly targeted for this. So one of the really amazing things is that San Francisco actually came out first and historically said that they were going to, retroactively release and look at all of these convictions and release these people back into to their families. So that was baked into Prop 64, is that all of these crimes are either going to be reduced or expunged. I was really happy to see that Alameda County followed suit after San Francisco did that. So they are going to be proactively helping people get, reinstated in society, and I really hope that the rest of the state and other jurisdictions follows through with that, because to us that was really the most important thing. It's tax revenue, we can debate all this time about where it's going, but there are people that are still sitting in prison just because they held on to a plant and because of the color of their skin. So that's why we push for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big issues that I know you guys have had to deal with, along with many dispensaries across the nation, is banking. Banking, so at that same financial conference I went to in Colorado, and one of the panelists They were talking about medicinal marijuana and legalization in Colorado and the banking issues. And they had basically a CEO from a dispensary there. And he says, we have to have on hand 30 bank accounts open because we'll get a notification from our main bank account saying, hey, we found out what this is being used for. We're shutting it down. Come pick up your money. And then they have to run over to bank account number 2. He says sometimes you get notified from bank account number 1 through 5, and it's just a constant battle with banks because they can't, because it's still on a federal level, it's still legal.
Oh, I really chalk it up to our finance department for the headaches that they deal with, these like normal things that are not challenges for other businesses. Yeah, in the 2 years that I've been there, we've had 3 bank accounts shut down. And it throws your whole entire game off. We can't process payroll. Like what, we can't process payments. And on top of that, we're making payments. We're going to make our first payment of tax revenue to the state in cash. It's going to be like tens of thousands of dollars we are just going to drop off in money to you, so that's just a great symbol of the stresses. Now,
and isn't it ironic that they still require you to pay payroll taxes?
That's how Al Capone got caught, right? It's he was doing illegal stuff, but it was the taxes. So yeah, they don't like what we're doing, but they'll take our tax money. And if we're not paying it, we're in even bigger trouble. But, San Francisco, I was really happy to see also is trying to form a credit union specifically for cannabis businesses. And I do think that, I'm not sure who came out, but somebody, I think it's Mukin, who's trying to make it easier for the federal banks or for the banks to, operate with these cannabis businesses, which is what I always thought. I'm like, I would assume that you would want more money and more revenue. Open it up to us.
No, I assume if you're a bank that only operates in California, you could service that industry, correct?
Yes.
It's just when you start crossing state lines and you're now federally insured is where the problem comes into play, which most banks do that anyway because they're trying to make more business.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge challenge.
So the financial department's in charge of all that. So they have all the headaches, and they're the ones that have to figure out. I mean, that makes it impossible because you can't even cut checks because you don't know if these checks are going to bounce because your account's being closed and you have to move it to another.
Exactly.
So are many vendors just paid in cash? Is that just how it is right now?
Yeah, for a long time it was like that. We're starting to see, the companies that have been around for a long time and that are, lucky enough to have some banking situation happening. There are checks and, things get paid that way. But a majority of it is a cash transaction business, which also, leads back to, safety issues, right? Like having that much cash on hand is a safety issue. We saw one of our neighbors just get, robbed because of that. So it's like you're forcing us. We're trying to be a very legitimate business, not even asking for the tax write-off. Forget that whole piece. Just give us a banking system that we can use and we can rely on so we can, operate like a normal business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when it went legal, do you have a line out the door of people waiting for day one?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool. So we opened at 6 a.m. We don't usually. We're 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. But we opened.
So people were waiting in line at 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was also, and you got to think of it too, it was like New Year's Day, so they probably hadn't gone to sleep yet.
Okay.
So, it was like kind of a party. We had a DJ, we had some food and stuff. The mayor of Berkeley actually came, Mayor Jesse Arreguin, and he came out and did the ribbon cutting ceremony with us. Chris Conrad and Mickey Norris, who are longtime activists in the area, they were the first legal purchase at BPG, and I think technically we might have been the first in the state. So it was a really celebratory event. We saw people from all walks of life, and especially some of these older consumers telling us that people told me I would never see this day. I would never live to see this day. And here it is. Here I am, a part of it. I'm not being demonized. There's no stigma. It was just a celebration. It was really, really awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I bet. I mean, just to go through the many years of just fighting and fighting and fighting, and then finally it happens. And even though it's on the state level, but it's a huge
Well, it's a huge
accomplishment.
state. They say,
Yeah.
you know, as goes California, so does the rest of the country. So this was, for a lot of people, like a really symbolic, like, okay, we are like almost there. This is really happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet it's gonna feel so much better when on a federal level they make it legal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about some marijuana myths here.
Love this section. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, so I have to give props to Sam here, our producer, for putting this together. And so basically what we're going to do is bring up a few rumors, facts, and other bits about marijuana and dive into how true or false they are. So myth number 1, marijuana kills brain cells.
Oh, great. So the marijuana kills brain cells was a result of the Reefer Madness campaign. This has since been disproven by many studies across the country and across the world, really. So the irony actually is that, it's been shown that it could be effective for protecting the brain cells against regenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So to say that it kills brain cells and when it actually might protect them is a little bit ironic and sad. That being said, teen use and adolescent use is never recommended just because the brain is developing.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, that I did see a study that showed the negative effects of marijuana die off at around 24 years old when the brain is fully developed. But prior to that, it can, and not that it always will, but it can affect the actual development of the brain.
Yeah, the brain chemistry, absolutely. Those early years are, very transformational for children and, well, for humans. So, anything that you're going to introduce during that time can potentially affect the brain chemistry. So.
Okay, myth number 2, marijuana is bad for your lungs.
Oh, fun one too. So people used to think that marijuana caused cancer, lung cancer. It doesn't. It actually might protect from lung cancer. Now, there is throat irritation caused from smoking, and, people who are heavy consumers can have decreased lung health. This is possible. Now, the way to mitigate that or avoid it is to use something like a vape pen, which is going to have less effect, or an edible.
Yeah, and some people will use papers that can also affect.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I know they even have organic papers now and stuff that is better for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the papers that you use.
Well, it's the combustion, too, of the plant, right? You're bringing in that raw material into your lungs. And, you're bringing the lighter fluid also if you're holding down a pipe or something like that. Which is why, we're seeing, again, a lot of our consumers transferring from flowers to vape pens or to edibles.
Yeah. And if you don't want to use one of those lighters that you buy for 50 cents at the store, they have organic wicks that you can use.
Hemp wick, which is all I love that they're doing like hemp wick, and then those organic papers are usually made from hemp, so it's kind of like the full circle of like the plant.
Yeah. And then edibles. If you're really worried about your lungs, you can always go to edibles.
Certainly.
So myth number 3, you can't get addicted to marijuana.
Okay, great question. So, cannabis is not physically addictive like heroin or caffeine, but it can be psychologically addictive, like anything. You can be addicted to online shopping.
Food.
Yeah, food, anything. So, it can be physically or mentally addictive, and, I think the latest study said that about 1 in 10 consumers is likely to develop psychological dependence.
1 in 10?
Mm-hmm.
There was also an interesting study where they looked at the percentage of people that try hard drugs that actually get addicted to it. And they determined about 16% of people that do a hard drug get addicted to it. So, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, like, to study, like, addiction and to see those results come back, because it's not always about the actual product
Exactly.
itself.
It's about the human psyche and the brain and whether or not that person does have an addictive personality.
Yeah, if you look at countries, Portugal is doing this right now where they decriminalized older drugs. And if you're caught with drugs or as a drug user, instead of sending you to prison, they put you into rehab programs. Now, the rehab programs are very interesting because they're completely different than what we have here.
Yeah.
Where they try to figure out, well, why are you using these drugs, and how do we fix those problems? And they're starting to see that it's really just about, hey, how do we get you back into society and bringing up your self-worth and what you can contribute to society?
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
Portugal is doing a fantastic. It's like really, really encouraging to see that being a successfully and just well thought out, program. It's not about demonizing people or, punishing them. It's about understanding why they got to where they are and just helping them be, contributing members of society, be a part of that. So drug use isn't necessarily about the drugs.
Yeah. And I think we need to see that mentality shift here in America, because I mean, a lot of the addiction problems would be solved with just a mindset change on how to just change the normal rehab programs.
Yeah, and so BPG is one of the founders of Americans for Safe Access, which is now in over 50 states and Washington, D.C. here. And then there's, like the Drug Policy Alliance is doing really, really great work right along those lines of Portugal and bringing to the forefront in America, and helping our citizens understand what's going on in Portugal, what's going on in Israel, and how we could also be doing these things and benefiting from them. It's really great.
Okay, myth number 4. Now that it's legal, I can smoke wherever I want to, whenever I want.
Oh, please don't. So one of the things with legalization is that, if you do smoke in public, which you are not supposed to, it's like alcohol, definitely don't smoke it near a school, definitely don't, smoke it where you're not. But the penalty is a $75 ticket, whereas before it was incarceration. So that's, I think, a really great improvement. Now, the first week I was in San Francisco, never having been to the West Coast, I will say that I was in downtown and there were people smoking joints and there was a cop right there and he didn't even bat an eye. So that's really cool to be somewhere where the police aren't necessarily trying to, cramp your style.
Or buy a $50 ticket and go to a reggae festival.
There you go.
Okay, myth number 5. Lots of marijuana is sprayed with pesticides and other harmful chemicals.
Lots is a vague term, but I will say definitely some. Again, the reason, BPG pushed for strong testing standards. I'm glad that, with Prop 64, the new regulations, their standards are going to make sure that everyone has quality control in the supply chain. But again, if for the people that are being forced back into the illegal market and who just because of price points, they're now being forced to, take a risk and maybe consume something that is really unhealthy or really bad for them. We did see, I believe it was in Canada, somebody consumed some cannabis that had, a really, really harmful pesticide, which when combusted can be fatal. So, it is scary and it is real, which is why, of course, if you can, you should purchase your cannabis from a licensed retailer.
Which is another reason why we should just legalize it,
Yep.
because once it's legalized and regulated, then the government has standards that protect everyone as opposed to, just something randomly laced. And I believe they said some 65% or 70% of marijuana that you buy on the street is not 100% marijuana. It's laced with other things or even fake too.
Yeah, fake.
Yeah.
There is fake cannabis. Sad.
Yeah, I remember in high school that some kid I knew was building a little side business of selling alfalfa as marijuana.
Wow.
And people were buying it off of him, and it didn't look like weed, but if you sell it to people who don't know any better,
They don't know. Yeah, exactly.
And it's cheap too, right?
That is, yeah, I would say, the same eighth we sell with taxes and cost of goods and everything baked in, if that's a $65 eighth, in the illegal market, it's going to be a $30, $25 eighth. And so it's kind of, I can see the dilemma that a lot of consumers are facing. They're like, I cannot afford these taxes, and especially if you're somebody who needs it for any kind of regular reason, right? It's the only thing that helps you sleep or it helps with your nausea, and that price point is just significantly cheaper. It's like, how do I not? But you're taking a risk.
I bet you once it becomes legal on a federal level, you'll see a lot of insurance companies start providing discounts to go that route as opposed to going prescription, because they get so screwed on prescription drugs. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay, myth number 6. Now that marijuana is legal, I don't need a medical card anymore.
That is true. You don't. You can,
But to save taxes.
Yes. We still highly encourage all of our adult users, if they are comfortable, to become a medical cannabis patient. Again, that tax break, you have more protections legally, too. You have higher possession limits, and you can also purchase more potent products if you want.
Okay, myth number 7. This one cracks me up. Marijuana stays in your system for 30 days, but drinking lots of cranberry juice can knock off a few days.
Love that one. I learned this one in high school. So it really depends, like anything, right? Marijuana can, if you're doing a lot of exercise, you're drinking a lot of fluids, it might come out of your system faster. I'm not sure cranberry juice is the particularly most effective thing, but if you were really, really worried about, passing a drug test or something, they do make cleansers that can remove it from your system.
And I believe depending on what you're testing for, most of the tests are going to be hair samples.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know
that you can't fake.
Exactly. Yeah. And marijuana stays in your hair for 90 days on that one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it'll be out of your urine and out of all that a little bit faster. But yes, in the hair, it's like a timeline of everything you've consumed. Those hair particles.
Yeah. Stays in your DNA.
Yeah, it's part of you now.
Myth number 8. Now that it's legal, it's going to be easier for kids under 21 to get access to it.
Yeah, so that's a huge concern from lots of moms. We hear that all the time. So in Colorado, they actually found that teen use went down when they legalized. So we expect to see the same here. And, the thing is that, illegal sellers on the street, they don't ID. We ID. We have serious security measures in place to ensure that children are not getting into it. On top of that, the packaging standards have increased and improved. Every packaged product now must be child-proof to the age, I believe, of 7 or 8 years old. And then, I think this piece of education to the consumers, to the parents, which BPG has taken on heavily. We give you a guide on how to safely store your products so that your children do not, get access to them. So there's a couple layers that kind of help, prevent more children from getting access to it.
Yeah, and that's a common argument. I mean, when it came to alcohol, tobacco, and and I think when something's out of reach, it's more attractive.
Totally.
But as soon as, it's like turning 21 to drink alcohol. When you're 20, you're excited if you can get into a bar or something. But as soon as 21 hits, all of a sudden it's like,
I'm good.
I'm going to stay home and just watch a documentary.
Right. It's like you want to do what your parents tell you not to do. Yeah. And if it's just like, all right, that's just down the street. I can get that when I'm 21. It's kind of takes away the mysticism of the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, myth number 9. Marijuana can have serious effects on childbirth if either the mom or dad smoke it.
So, child rearing is always a very touchy subject, right? Now, definitely if you're a healthy mother, you shouldn't consume cannabis. Don't put anything in your body, that might alter that. But there are rare cases where, a mother can have such severe sickness that they can't keep any food down and, the baby is not getting any nourishment. So there are some women who, with the help of their doctor, are, implementing cannabis as part of their treatment, in place of some of these narcotics and some of these, stronger opioids. It's a touchy subject. There's not a lot of research that has been done. Definitely not on, the pregnancy piece of it now. So again, if it was something you were interested in, there are doctors that understand that a little better, but it's a bit of a gray area. And, Dad...
And it's another reason why the federal government just needs to take this off Schedule 1, because then it allows that research to happen.
Absolutely. Science saves a lot of things, but we seem to be a little bit hesitant to it. But I would say, you asked about Dad, too. I would just say from a relationship standpoint, if mom can't smoke, dad shouldn't smoke either. No, but there won't be any actual harm to the baby if dad consumes and, is a consumer and then they make a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lauren, I want to thank you for coming out onto the podcast, and it was a great talk. What's the best way for someone to learn more about Berkeley Patients Group?
Certainly, yeah. So you can visit mybpg.com. You can call us at 510-540-6013. We'll talk to you anytime. Or you can just stop by. We're at 2366 San Pablo in Berkeley.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at markguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.